NFL free agency coming up soon. Here's a look at Pete Prisco's top 10 free agents entering the day. Now, it used to be players, agents, front office executives would get the ball rolling really early. So the league decided to try to put this 48-hour window so that things could get going when that new league year got underway. And we're going to talk about it with two of the best, Danny Kanell, Brady Quinn, joining us here. Jacqueline Agostino, I'm Tommy Tran. So as we take a look at some of the players that we're going to highlight, guys, situations are different for each player. If I start with Danielle Hunter, Brady Quinn, it was interesting because Minnesota looked like they're going to go in a different direction. He came back from that, herniated disc, played well. What market do you think there is for Hunter out there?
There will be a robust market for his services, and the writing's on the wall now with Jonathan Grenard signing in Minnesota. I do believe Danielle Hunter will hit the free agent market. And if you look at 4 of the top 5 teams as far as cap space, they all have needs at the edge rusher. I mean, Washington could use him on either side there. They're leading right now in the NFL with cap space. Tennessee, Chicago, Houston, all teams with needs off of the edge. So Danielle Hunter should be able to ink up a pretty solid deal, and even at 29 years old, still kind of relatively young, and we saw Von Miller ink a pretty big deal as he's gotten up there in age. So I think there's going to be a big market.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The fact that he's had as much experience as he has and he's still not even 30 yet is pretty remarkable. I know he's dealt with some injuries, but I don't think it's that much of a concern. The Bears are a really interesting option, staying in the division and a team that's young and possibly, could want to bolster up that defense to support whatever direction they go at quarterback. I think that's one that's always intriguing when you see one. But Washington, to me, has the deepest pockets out of anybody that would have that ability to go get him if they wanted him. But I kind of like the Bears for Danielle Hunter.
And you have to think, too, Dan Quinn now taking over as head coach. That's where he made his bread as defensive coordinator with the Seattle Seahawks. That vicious pass rush to go along with the secondary and the Legion of Boom back during his time in Seattle.
Let's talk about the Texans. Obviously, Will Anderson Jr. coming off of a great rookie season. But for them, if they want to bolster the pass rush, Danny, what direction do you think Houston is going to go in?
It's an interesting. Do they go with a veteran, a guy like Zadarius Smith? Do they potentially go outside the box and pair, a veteran, a guy who's 31 with a lot of experience and, was on the open market as well? I would be curious to see if they called up a Danielle Hunter and see if he's interested, because that would be a pretty attractive option for him, too. There's some options out there, I think, for the Texans to go with. And I think it is imperative they give him somebody on the other side, because he's starting to turn a lot of heads, and you know how that goes. They start turning protection. You gain that much, they start double teaming you. They really start focusing on you. If you want to keep his career trajectory on course, give him somebody on the opposite side that's a worthy adversary so they can't focus all their attention on him.
Yeah, it's funny, going back to Minnesota, D.G. Wanham is a free agent. He was one of those kind of bright budding stars, maybe not top of the list, but a guy who could come and I think do a really good job. Still young enough too, which maybe would make some sense. So he's a name that I keep an eye out for, but really at this point, I mean, you're looking at anyone who you feel like would be able to pair nicely across from him. But that's also the side of the ball. If you're Houston, you need to do a lot of spending. I mean, that side struggled at times. You know what you have in Stroud. You know what you have in that offense when they're healthy. Now it's about building up the defense to get to where D'Amico Ryans feels confident in that group, rushing forward, not having to worry about bringing additional pressure.
And you have not 1, but 2 outstanding rookies on their rookie contract. Like, now's the time to buy and spend on the free agent market so you have the room to do it with those 2 rookie salaries.
Tommy, before we move along to Tony Pollard, Jonathan Grenard signing with the Vikings. We just keep getting all of these names rolling in. But let's get to Tony Pollard, because now the Cowboys are going to need a running back, someone at that position. Tony Pollard, after 5 seasons in Dallas, is going to be there in Tennessee, a potential weapon for Will Levis. But Brady, what do the Cowboys do at running back? Because Tony Pollard, coming off of career lows across the board in Dallas, wasn't the expectation for him. Saquon has been thrown out there. I don't know if that would happen, but what do you think they should do?
Nothing right now. I mean, like if you were building a roster, that is not the position that I put the forefront of all of this. And I know Tony Pollard signed in Tennessee, and Swift is now signed with the Chicago Bears. Those are surprising to me for this reason, is you really want to build the trenches inside out. And then you're looking at cornerbacks, wide receivers, quarterbacks, really those 5 positions, tackles, edge rushers as part of those trenches. So it's a bit surprising that, we're talking about the running back position only because they're going to be one of the smaller allocations as far as a percentage percentage of your cap. And if you're really the Dallas Cowboys, you'd rather look into the draft, to be quite honest with you. Like, I think we're to a point now with Dak and where he's at in his career, Danny. I think you got to put more pressure on him and say, we're willing to get by with running back by committee.
And don't forget also the Ezekiel Elliott deal didn't exactly pan out great for them, so they're kind of still licking their wounds on that one, probably tentative on spending that much on a running back. At some point, though, I do think you've got to look at the value of Saquon Barkley. It depends on what he's asking for, and he's probably asking for a lot because this is his first chance to test it. He wasn't happy with the deal he got with the Giants, but I actually think it would be a good pairing at the right price because I still think he is a player that could be in that upper echelon of running back that is in the elite category that is different than just a guy you could plug in. And I think you might get that version of Saquon. He's seen so many full boxes, like just stacked boxes because they had no pad. No one was scared of Daniel Jones or whoever else they were rolling back there at quarterback. The offensive line wasn't very good. Saquon has just been kind of a victim of that circumstance. If you put him with Dak and an offensive line that's much better and a pass game that's legit, I think it could bring back that Rookie of the Year version of Saquon that we could see.
3 things that would make this make sense for Saquon in Dallas. Obviously, his abilities. That's a given at this point. But players look at this point in time. State of Texas, no state income tax.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't have to necessarily make the same amount as another state where we're going to get taxed a little bit more heavily. That's one thing. The power of the star on that helmet and what that means from a marketing standpoint. Now, he's with the New York Giants. That is the biggest market. However, it still doesn't compare for the opportunities that would come his way probably with the Dallas Cowboys. So he's got that in his back pocket as well. And I think the last thing is it's divisional rival.
Yeah.
You're a free agent now. You can stick it back to the team that didn't want to give you a long-term deal. Of course, that might be a little bit extra to take a little bit less to go with the Dallas Cowboys. So for those 3 reasons, it could make some sense.
It's just interesting because we're talking about 2 of the 3 running backs that got tagged last year along with Josh Jacobs, thinking they would maybe 1 or 2 of them would have long-term deals, and yet they're all having to look for new teams and new deals this offseason. Let's get to another player that's been, I think, whenever he's done playing football, could be a social media manager, guys. Talking about Deion Dawkins, Buffalo Bills, because we know.
I thought he said goodbye.
Right? Because Buffalo, they're purging. They got to cut cap, and this is what he posted on X. Said it was good while it lasted. Buffalo, peace sign. Excited for this next chapter of my football career. Wonder if it's okay to eat ranch now. That led everyone to believe that he was part of like Mitch Morse and Poyer and everybody getting out. However, he came back and said, by the way, I've actually inked an extension there. Danny, what did you make of the troll? And then what did you make of the
outstanding job. I mean, from the Troll King. I can go ahead and this is a solid game right here.
At least you're owning it. That's step 1.
No, I think this is a really solid move. I think when you had older veterans that weren't as productive as you thought they would be, it was easy to make that decision. This player's coming off a couple Pro Bowls. He's protecting Josh Allen. You talked about the importance of the positions that you're going to go out and protect. This, the tackle position, there's maybe arguably none more important than that one. And he's been a stable presence on that offensive line. So they know what they want to build around, and they know the pieces are dispensable. And clearly Dawkins is not one of them.
Third fewest cap space, though, so kind of a need, too. If they're going to extend them, they're going to have to find a way of doing it in a creative manner. But this is part of the building blocks for the Bills. If they want to get to a Super Bowl, you've got to maintain one of the edge protectors for your star quarterback in Josh Allen. So not necessarily a surprise. I know they purged a bunch of players, but it's so they could keep a guy like Deion Dawkins, who's that important to the roster.
And oftentimes when you get that extension, you mentioned the salary cap is always interesting because if there's players they really want, they figure out how to make it work. They'll push some forward. They'll guarantee a large sum of it. They always figure out how to rework a contract, extend it to keep the guys they really want.
The biggest disparity right now in the NFL is between ownership. And that's the type of owners that you have. Those that have the cash, that are making a ton of cash and can pay out that cash to be over the cap, in the sense of when you're paying out a ton of money in signing bonuses and you can spread that money out over the length of or term of the contract, you have got a lot more ability to sign some of those stars or beat other teams out. There's other organizations and owners that are not structured that way. They don't have the financial means to do so. And that's where if you have the cash, you can have a huge advantage on your opponents out there in regards to free agency and signing some of the best players.
All right, and some more free agency news. Christian Wilkins, he is no longer a Miami Dolphin. He is about to become a member of the Las Vegas Raiders, signing a 4-year deal, $110 million, $85 million of that guaranteed. Last year with the Dolphins, top 5 in tackles, sacks, and so forth. BQ, what do you make of that move?
Great signing for the team, great signing for him. This is a need for, obviously, Antonio Pierce and his defense in Las Vegas. They have to improve. They're going to from the inside out with the signing. For him, it's awesome. He's cashing cashing in on a big-time deal. We know Miami's in a tough spot from a cap perspective, so Las Vegas has the money to spend, but he goes from one no-state income tax state to another, so kudos for Christian Wilkins for winning out on that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, this literally was the definition of a cap casualty. I think the Dolphins would have liked to have kept him. They just couldn't come to an agreement, and he goes out there, breaks the bank. Totally agree with Antonio Pierce. Defensive guy, wants to build a culture of passionate young players that love playing the game. I think that defines him. He's athletic for the position he plays, can clog up that middle. I think it's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought he'd get paid, and he didn't have to wait very long. We got some more moves that we're talking about here out in Green Bay, Danny Kanell. David Bakhtiari not going to be a Packer much longer.
I said to him, I'm like, how soon before he signs with the Jets? I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers' guy. They need help along the offensive line. We're talking about the salary cap, figuring out ways to make it fit. Look how Aaron Rodgers last offseason dictated a lot of the moves. I know he's tried to deny it, but there was even a post last year from Aaron Rodgers to Bakhtiari kind of alluding to, hey, man, why don't you come over here if you're not happy there? Now that he's able to go hit the offensive market, I think this feels about as close to done as you could see.
Yeah, it's a need. It makes sense. It'll be a fit. And on top of it, I don't think they're going to have to spend a ton, to get him, because I think Bakhtiari might be more apt to want to come play with his buddy in New York and be with the Jets. So it makes a lot of sense. I would imagine that's where this is headed.
All right, in more news, we have Pete Prisco is in the sidelines here, so we have to get his body language and see what happens. Gabe Davis heading to the Jags, a 3-year deal. He's giving a thumbs up from the wings. Danny, we know with Calvin Ridley, there were some issues with him learning the offense, a wide receiver there, but what do you make of Gabe Davis going to Duval?
I mean, he's probably been one of the more productive, underrated receivers for the Bills, so I think this is a really good fit. Trevor Lawrence needs some help, needs some guys to throw to. I think he could emerge as one of his top targets, so I like it a lot.
Who's the number one? I'll put it this way. It's no disrespect to Gabe Davis there, but, you know, he was with Stephon Diggs. He was number 2 to Stephon Diggs there. You now go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we don't necessarily have the details to the deal. But at this point in time, you know, you're looking at it, if you're Trevor Lawrence, saying, well, who's my guy who's going to separate? Who's my guy I'm going to lean on those big moments? Gabe Davis has had some big moments, but he's not with the Bills anymore because, unfortunately, there weren't enough of those big moments. And I think if you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, regardless of what we want to say about Calvin Ridley, caught for 1,000 yards. I think as the season wore on, he started to know the offense a little bit better, a little more comfortable. This is probably a sign that he's not going to be signing back with the Jaguars. And I think that's a tough spot for Trevor Lawrence, because now you don't have that number one you can lean on. Maybe they can find that guy somewhere else. They can make something work. But that would be my concern now with this. Not a bad signing for them, but they got to find a number one wide receiver. And
you mentioned Calvin Ridley, but where do you think he could go? What is a good fit for him?
Bunch of different teams that I think could use him. You know, we talked earlier, like the Tennessee Titans would be one that come to top of the mind. You got a young quarterback in Will Levis. Hopkins is out there too as an older veteran. The place I would like for him is honestly the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, you can reunite with Arthur Smith, so that you know, offensive concerns aren't an issue there. Whether it's Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, take your pick. You've now got George Pickens on one side, Calvin Ridley on the other, Pat Freiermuth at tight end. You're going to need those sorts of weapons if you want to compete for an AFC North Division title.
Things are continuing to evolve, and CBS Sports app will have you covered, especially on this day and every day. Scan the QR code there or download the CBS Sports app however you get your apps, and we'll have the very latest for you right at your fingertips.